The war ended in Europe in the beginning of summer of 1945, and at that point I was a school teacher in the New York City system. I was an art teacher in high school, and there was an opening for somebody to devise a system of clubs to entertain our troops overseas. The Red Cross was going to run them. I applied for the job, and I got it. I was 35. I never knew that I would end in Okinawa at all. We were put on a train and told we were going off on our journey. It was at night. All the shades were drawn. Nobody must see a train moving at night. And I thought to myself, Paris, here I come. But in the morning, when we pulled up the shades, we were not in New York waiting to get on a ship to Paris. No. We were on a train and it was going west. So I knew we had been switched and we were going off to the war zone, because we were still fighting in Japan at that time. We were put on a ship, and the ship was a troop transport. We were set to go to wherever they were fighting the war against Japan. Before our ship was to sail, war ended. We were told on the ship that we would be used as a guinea pig, that there were a lot of U-boats, Japanese U-boats around who might not have realized that the war ended yesterday, and that we would be sunk. They were sure we would, but they'd have to make sure we would be the first ship out, not in convoy, and with lights on at night. The ship came into Manila. That was a surprise. We didn't know where we would land. We were not told at any point during the trip. In Manila, was just a staging point. We were to go to wherever we were going to be appointed. And I was appointed to go to Okinawa. We flew to Okinawa, and I landed there at night in a terrific gale, windstorm. It was pouring in Okinawa, and everything had been blown to hell. They had no place to put us. But there was a tent they found for me that night, the Red Cross, and stuck me in there. There was one bed under a chair in the tent. It was being poured. The bed was under a constant stream. It looked like a waterfall, but it had ponchos on it, and that was where I was going to sleep, under the ponchos. It was dark and light. There was no lights of any sort. There were nurses, and the army nurses had been put into this tent because their Quonset had been blown away. I spent 7 months on that dead, deserted, blasted to hell island with men who were waiting to go home, who had fought and fought terribly, inch by inch. There was nothing on this bare landscape but broken, rusting tanks, chunks of planes that had been shot down. That had been the final battle of the war. It was the definitive end of the war, because it was just a few hundred miles from the next stop, which was Japan. D-Day for the invasion of Japan was set for November 1st. And the whole army was prepared for that. The whole fleet was there. Millions of troops in the U.S. Army, in Europe being sent home, millions of troops going to Europe to be the occupying army, a whole army going to Japan to be an occupying army there. Thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of Japanese troops all over Asia being transported home, so that there was just a shortage of shipping everywhere. And when the troops who had been fighting from island to island were waiting and thinking, well, maybe at Christmas I'll get home. But it was not to be. Recruiter came from MacArthur's they needed Americans to work with MacArthur. There was a lot of office work and all kinds of things. And they sent a recruiter from the WAC, a WAC major, to see if she could pick some Americans off Okinawa, which would be near and already had experience with Army and so on. And so I was offered a job as a teacher.